Welcome once again, Mastering Really Difficult Conversations. I'm your host, Nathan Magnuson. We're sponsored by Leadership in a Box. Tell you a little bit about that at the end. But just in a way of introduction, I have spent about 12 years in corporate leadership development in Fortune 500 organizations like HCA Healthcare, like Tenet Healthcare, Masco, and Accenture. Also have been in the military. Privileged to write a couple of books. I'm also proud to be from Kansas City. I'm proud to be living in Dallas right now. And one of the Connect to Purpose items I like to share in my presentations is this, that I believe one of the greatest gifts in all of life is the gift of being well led. And that includes the gift of respectful and empathetic, difficult conversations. I think that's a gift that all of us can give in our leadership, and hopefully we'll be able to give it even better in about 25 minutes than we can right now. So I want to thank you for joining us. Here's some of the thought leadership out there. I'm not going to get into that. You can go to the website and find all of it, but I am going to drop my LinkedIn address in the chat. I've tried to be pretty active on LinkedIn. It's good to keep these discussions going. We've been talking about difficult conversations for the last month or so. And so if we're not connected, I'd be happy to be connected with you there. I want to ask you though, as we start, why are you here today? And I always like to know what caused you to click the registration button, make time on your calendar to show up. Everyone's busy, everyone has a lot going on. And I want to share something that someone brought up recently in one of these difficult conversation sessions. We were doing a session for a hospital group, and a nurse director said, if I get this wrong, if I have a poor conversation with my team, my best worker may quit, and if that happens, I won't be able to replace her. And that just brought it home quite a bit. This is real important. We have difficult conversations. I'm the leader, I'm responsible, but with everything going on, if I do this poorly, it could be the last straw for someone on my team. And with staffing shortages, with the way that budget is set up, we're not getting a replacement soon. So we said we will do this right. We will help out with this because of how important and how critical it was at the moment. What about you? If you could drop something in the chat, what caused you to say, I want to be here today, and what do you want to get out of this session? We won't be here for very long, but I want it to be a high quality time for us. So we have Megan saying, hey, I need to grow in this for sure. Yogini, good to see you again. They're easy at a theoretical level, but hard to go through. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the things we're going to show you, is that difficult conversations aren't actually that complicated. And so we're going to show you a quick, it's only just 3 steps, and that will hopefully make our lives much easier. Tina talking about, the chat went too fast for me. I think it was being adaptable in conversation. So that's going to be part of this as well. Monica, getting those conversations started can be tricky as well. Someone is mentioning the model. Hey, I want to see the model. I could use a model for something like this. Allison talking about wanting to avoid conflict, and I'm with you on that one. In fact, I think this is on the next slide, actually, or it's another slide. So let's ask another question though. Why don't we enjoy initiating difficult conversation, or what keeps us from putting ourselves out there and initiating a conversation we know that we need to have? Allison, I think you kicked us off there. It's wanting to avoid conflict is one of the big reasons. Fear of negative outcomes. Michael, you're talking about not wanting to offend someone, wanting to avoid. Craig, it's actually not my quote, it's Tim Ferriss, and I put that at the end of our presentation because I wanted to include that too. The fear of making things worse. Let's do another poll and share a few of these a few of the responses that we've seen. We actually did this poll on LinkedIn a couple weeks ago to warm up, and let's see how closely the responses match what we saw on the LinkedIn poll a few weeks ago. What makes you feel the most uncomfortable when initiating a difficult conversation? For those listening on the recording, the options are: we feel unprepared, there's a possibility of conflict, I have a poor track record, or it may damage the relationship. So got a lot of responses coming in. I'm going to give it, let's give it a couple more seconds here. And 3, 2, 1, we'll call it. And the results are 19% of you said feeling unprepared. The possibility of conflict was the greatest at 43%. Poor track record, that's not a concern, but may damage the relationship at 38%. So especially on the relationship standpoint, that's the tricky part. We are going to help you with that here today. Let's talk about 2 mistakes that we often make. And we've mentioned these already in the chat. I like this interaction. And it's interesting to me because we can't turn the mics on. We have too many people, but I hope this feels like it's a dialogue as we go. And in fact, if you're on the recording, I hope you feel you're part of this conversation. But 2 of the critical mistakes that we can make in these difficult conversations, number 1 is we can avoid them altogether, right? I don't want to make it worse. It's uncomfortable. I don't like it. So we tend to avoid, and then a situation can get worse that we're not addressing, right? Or we're proactive, but we're not prepared. And sometimes we may be emotional or in the heat of the moment, in addition to being unprepared, and that can make a situation worse. So it's kind of like pick your poison. Some of us may feel unprepared, and that causes us to avoid, right? And so it can get real tricky really quickly. How many of you watched the little video we sent? I think probably not everyone got it because we had some late joiners, but most of you got an email here within the last couple days with a little 2-minute video. How many of y'all had 2 minutes to take a look? And let us know if you had a takeaway from the little 2-minute video. But for the rest of us, I'm going to talk about the scenario that we shared. And we'll use this just kind of as an example. Let's say, imagine you are a nurse in a children's hospital. Okay. And then the physician orders a medication for the patient, but you think you remember that the parent had mentioned an allergic reaction to a drug that you think might be in that medication. And so all of a sudden, you've got the alarm bells going off in your mind. And we need to ask ourselves some questions, don't we? First question would be, what makes this conversation difficult? And I'll answer that one for us. It's difficult because we think there may be a situation where I need to go to the physician, and it may feel like I'm challenging his judgment or his decision because of the information that I have. What's the reporting dynamic that we need to think about? In this case, the physician is responsible for the treatment, so it's a superior type of reporting relationship, as opposed to it's someone on my team, a direct report, or a peer type of dynamic. And that changes a little bit of how that conversation can go.
Okay, there.
What about this one? I'm actually interested to hear your input in the chat. What is the cost of not having a difficult conversation? There's a cost, right? There could be a cost to you, a cost to the physician. There could be a cost to the organization. If you do not have this conversation, what could some of those costs be? There could be errors, said Amy, and some really bad ones, right? Melissa talking about breaking down organizations and teams. Patient safety comes first, right? That's the most important thing, is the patient safety. Natalia talking about a lawsuit from the organizational standpoint. Marie, harm, right? That goes to the safety of the patient. And then broken trust, that's afterwards, right? So lot a lot of costs for not having this conversation. What about this? Should you, if you're the nurse in that situation, should you initiate a conversation? Is it your responsibility? What do you think? Katie says yes. Always. Yes, yes, yes. You're right. Hopefully that's the easiest question we'll go through. It won't be easy, it may not be comfortable, but it is our responsibility if we're in that situation. I need to say something because of what may happen if I don't. So we're gonna spend some time talking in the next 15 minutes about a model for initiating difficult conversations that is not complicated. It's short and sweet. We're going to talk about what to say, and then we're going to talk about how to say it. Because if you've led for any amount of time, you've probably realized by now it's not always what you say. More often, it's how you say it that leads to both a positive outcome and a positive relationship. So let's jump right in. There are 3 steps. Not complicated, but 3 steps, and I'll go through them in order. Step 1 is we need to state the facts. And unfortunately, a lot of us get mixed up on this one, right? We state other things besides the facts. We may state our opinion. We may state hearsay. I heard from someone that this happened. It was reported, we're doing a big loop at that point. We may state emotions, right? I'm unhappy with, and then fill in the blank. It could be perceptions, lots of things other than facts, where that's really where we need to start, stating the facts. It could sound like, this is what happened, right? Or this is my understanding of what has happened. That's where we need to start in a conversation like this. Number 2, sharing the implication. I'm worried that this could mean fill in the blank. If a fact on its own may not make a huge difference, but the fact could bring some implications with it. Just like the scenario we talked about, the physician ordered a medication. That's what physicians do, but here's the implication I'm worried about. There could be an allergic reaction. And then the change request, number 3, or the solution. How many of you have said to people on your team before, don't come to me with a problem unless you bring a solution with you? We want to bring a solution with us to the conversations that we have, right? State the facts, share the implication, make the change request. In the scenario with the physician, it might look like, it might sound something like this. You ordered the medication for the patient. I'm concerned, or I'm worried that there could be an allergic reaction based on a conversation I had with the parent. I'd like to propose double checking with the parent to make sure it's okay before we give them the medication. Or I'd like to propose reading the study on the medication to make sure that that drug is not included before we administer. Something like that. I want to make sure we have a solution as well. So far, so good, right? We have 3 steps. These are the what to say. And by the way, I'm going to share a worksheet in an email afterwards that will have the steps with you. So I hope you're writing them down somewhere, taking notes. That's great. But I'll share this with you in a worksheet that you can use. But let's talk about how we can have the conversation. If this is what we need to say, how can we say it in a way that will be more likely to get a positive outcome and contribute to a positive relationship, right? And so I like to talk about open door communication. And if you look at the little pictures here, how many of you have had a conversation with someone where you felt like, no matter what I say, I am not getting in? The person's unreceptive to my message. No matter what I do, what I say, it's not happening. Versus someone that the door is open and you're having a great conversation, they're engaged in the conversation with you. Closed door versus open door. And really the biggest difference is whether it's a monologue or a dialogue. Are we the only ones talking? I'm telling my side, or is there sharing on both sides and asking on my part? Am I inviting them to be in a discussion with me? By the way, it's usually not too difficult. Katie, raising your hand. I think we got an emoji. First emoji we've gotten today. Good to see, Katie. Yep, you're like, yep, that's happened to me. We can usually tell when we have closed door, unreceptive to message. It looks like this. How many of you have had someone get emotional in a difficult conversation, or someone who's aloof, right? They're just not into it. There's a good body language tips that, hey, the person's unreceptive. We need to take a step back and work on how are we delivering this. It can be hard to interpret. By the way, especially in our virtual conversations, right? Because that puts a barrier between our body language. So let's go back to the model, and I'm going to show you a few questions to insert that will help open that door to two-way dialogue. Here we go. The first one is we need to ask for permission. May I share a concern with you? This one is like magic, I'll be honest, because essentially it's like knocking on the door. You know, how many times do we know I need to have a difficult conversation and we barge straight in there with the facts? This is what happened and implication. And even if we follow those 3 steps, the door hasn't been opened yet and we don't have permission, right? And we get that resistance. We need to knock on the door by asking permission. May I share a concern with you? Is this a good time? I don't know that I've ever had someone say no. Sometimes someone has said, not right now, but I've got to finish something up. Can we talk a little bit later? And if it's not an emergency, that's always best, because if we interrupt someone right in the middle of something, that conversation is probably not going to go great anyways. So yeah, Michael, Christina, I'll send this to you in a follow-up email. I'll send a worksheet. It'll have this information on there. In fact, it'll have a little fill in the blanks so you can put your own conversation into here. Asking for permission up front. Then we want to state our facts and our implication, and then take another time out and ask for input. How do you see the situation? Why is this step so important? I'm loving the dialogue here in the chat. Why do you think the second question is so important? Asking for input. Well, I'll tell you. It's important because how many of us have ever gotten the facts wrong, right? Or Shanna, like you said, we don't always have the full picture. Or our implication, the thing that we're worried about, might be off base. You know, Michael's saying it opens both the doors for both ways, absolutely. So in the instance with the physician might say, you know, I checked with the parents already and made sure it's a different concern. We're good to go. Or I specifically chose a medication to make sure that it didn't trigger an allergic reaction. And then at that point, boom, we don't even need a solution. It's already been made. And we've done our part by voicing our concern. There's different information, different perceptions are bringing to the table, and then we can pursue a solution together. By the way, we can solve after the second question. We need to bring a solution with us, but we may not even get that far because of the input that the other person has for us. By the way, one of the tricky things about difficult conversations when people feel unprepared is they actually over prepare by scripting what they're going to say. And then it's like they're rehearsing from a script, which really hurts the two-way dialogue. That's one of the reasons that on this example, we have the really short sounds like, you know, so we want to have a phrase or a sentence for each of the steps, but not a script, because a script can prevent two-way dialogue. And then the final one here, once we've proposed a solution or once we've created one together, is asking commitment. Would you be willing to make this change? This is this is like hitting a home run, but not touching home base when we come around the bases, is by not asking for commitment. Until we get a commitment, we don't have resolution. So taking that last step, Michael, you're saying, yep, I've done that one before. I'll crank that home run, but I didn't touch home. So remembering to ask for commitment. And sometimes it's a commitment we need to make. If it's a new solution, I will commit to my piece of what we're agreeing on to make the situation better. So we're 21 minutes in, and wow, here's the model. But I want to talk a little bit more about, actually, here's a reminder. We can't control another person's behavior or reaction, but we can control our decision to initiate a respectful and an empathetic conversation. I want to talk a little bit more about what do respectful and empathetic conversations look like. Karis, you love that. I know, because here's the thing. If we were responsible for an outcome, it just doesn't work every time. And so controlling what we can control, that's the best that we can do. What do mature conversations look like versus immature? This is the model is important, but this is probably my favorite slide in this whole thing. Is take a look at the items on the left side, the mature items, and think, if there is a leader who initiates a difficult conversation with me, how badly would you want them to be on the mature side of this slide? Someone who's respectful, they're prepared, they're not scripted, but they are prepared, they're patient, willing to adapt, concise. It doesn't have to be a half an hour conversation. We can take care of it in 5 minutes. That they seek to understand, they want our input instead of having a conversation at us, and based on fact. We don't have to worry about how they're feeling in the moment. And so I want to give you all a chance to brag on yourself real quick. I don't think we brag on ourselves enough. I like to take that opportunity when we have it. I'd like you to look at the list on the left side. Shannon, you're getting a takeaway here. Look at the list on the left side, and I want you to pick one that you think, this is my best one. I may not get it 100% of the time, but 95% of the time, I'm good on this one. What's the item that's your best one? I want you to put a little humble brag there in the chat, because I want us, that's where we start. Let's start with where we're doing great. Seeking to understand, willing to compromise, respectful. Those are some good ones. Marie talking about patient. I've got patience down based on fact. I'm a consultant at heart, so solution oriented. That's the one I picked for myself. We consultants who want to find the solution. But now I want to flip it, and I don't want to look at the immature side, because we're not trying to be immature. But if we stay on the mature side and think, is there one item that you'd like to be just a little bit better at? One that you like to bump up, level up on? And I'll go first. For me, it's adaptable. So great at finding a solution, but then being able to adapt the solution. That's the one for me that I want to take to the next level for myself. By the way, the reason that we do this, I had someone say in a workshop not long ago. They said, Nathan, this was really good information, but when you made me pick which one applied to myself, that's when I really learned. In other words, it was in 1 year, and it was traveling, and then we got it, and they had that takeaway. That's when it stuck. And then if they implement, that's where it goes from the head to the heart, becomes part of who they are. So that's why we do this. We want you to pick which items are the ones that we really need to be focused on. That was a good discussion. I enjoyed that. So we're going to send you a few things. We're going to send you the recording. We'll send you the little video. We'll send you the worksheet. That's probably enough. We have a separate article that has this slide laid out in an article. If you want that, email me. Just reply to the email and say, hey, can you send the article too? And I'll send that your way. as well. One of you mentioned the Tim Ferriss quote, so I want to share it with you as we start wrapping up. A person's success in life can be measured by the number of uncomfortable conversations he or she is willing to have. I really took that one home, right? As a leader, it's my responsibility to say what needs to be said despite my discomfort. That means it's also my responsibility to learn and grow in the maturity level of my conversations, because we all start off on the immature side and it's a growth process, isn't it? So we're gonna do, I'm gonna hang out for overtime. We're gonna have some questions and answers. But beforehand, I wanna invite you to our next webinar. This will be our final one of the year on teamwork, the DNA of top performing teams. I've dropped a link in the chat. I'll put it in the email as well. You can have first dibs. You're the first one to know about this. And we're gonna have a fun conversation as far as that goes too. If you have a conversation, go ahead and drop it in the chat. And we've got 3 minutes left till time before we go into our overtime round of Q&A. And in that couple minutes, I'd just like to share a quick commercial on Leadership in a Box. 30% of you have heard about this. Some of you I know have it in your organizations already. I'm excited about that. But basically, we are best in class, off the shelf leadership programming. So it's kind of like the difference between getting a Dr. Pepper and getting a Dr. Pepper machine, where we can keep cranking those out. Leadership in a Box, they're all 60-minute programs. So our program today was about 20 minutes that came from the 60-minute program of difficult conversations. Where we're in the 60 minutes, we'd be doing exercises, working on the worksheets, and having some discussions. The box is basically the toolkit. So all the programs have the presentations, they have the handouts with the assessments and the worksheets. They even have I keep saying worksheets. It's worksheets. There we go. The communications pre-drafted so that an HR leader or a trainer or a gung-ho team leader, like a lot of you are, you don't have to think about it. You just copy paste. Here's the email for the team, come to the workshop, or afterwards, here's a copy paste. Don't forget to read the article and follow up on the worksheet items, those types of things. We have the video, we have a follow-up article. By the way, the 2-minute video we sent was the video we used. Watch the video to warm up to the topic. And some of these discussion guides as well. So we have a very wide variety of topics. Difficult conversations has been one, it's probably the most requested one. Leading change has been really popular this year. Stress management resilience has been this year too, but we have almost any of these leadership topics. So, and here's our promo also. Through the end of the year, we're doing a $500 off for this session, Difficult Conversations. Whether you want our team to facilitate, or if you want the annual license to give us the Dr. Pepper machine, and we'll train it over and over again. We have a couple other vendors hopping on our call today to check us out, so we can't share the pricing, but email me. I'll be happy to share it for your organization and give you a demo. I'd love to show it to you. So all you've got to do is hit reply on the email we send. We'd be happy to show it to you. And here's, I'm going to give you the link now, and then we're going to jump into Q&A.